The dust cloud on the horizon grew smaller with each passing moment, and Lena Lawrence realized with cold certainty that the wagon train was truly leaving her behind. She stood beside the broken wheel of her family's wagon, her father lying still beneath a rough blanket, his chest no longer rising with breath. The fever that had taken him 3 days ago had finally claimed his life that morning, and the wagon master had given her an hour to bury him and catch up. But the wheel had splintered during the burial, the wood cracking like her father's promise that they would make it to California together. And now, she watched 20 wagons disappear into the New Mexico Territory dust. It was August 1868, and Lena was 22 years old, alone in a landscape that stretched endlessly in all directions. The mountains rose in the distance, purple and indifferent. The sun beat down without mercy, and she had perhaps 3 days of water if she was careful. Her hands were still dirty from burying her father in the hard earth, and her dark hair had come loose from its pins, whipping across her face in the hot wind. She did not cry. There was no point in crying. Her mother had died 2 years ago back in Missouri, and her father had convinced her that a new start in California would heal them both. Now he was in the ground, and she was stranded somewhere between Santa Fe and nowhere. The sound of hoofbeats made her spin around, her heart hammering. A single rider approached from the south, and she felt a spike of fear. A woman alone was vulnerable in ways she did not want to consider. She reached for the rifle in the wagon, checking that it was loaded as her father had taught her. The rider came closer, and she could see he sat tall in the saddle, his hat pulled low against the sun. He rode with the easy confidence of someone who belonged to this harsh landscape. As he drew near, he slowed his horse, raising one hand in a gesture of peace. "Easy there," he called out, his voice carrying across the distance. "I am not here to harm you." Lena kept the rifle pointed in his direction but lowered it slightly. As he came closer, she could see he was young, perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that were a startling blue against his tanned face. He wore dusty brown trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest. A revolver sat at his hip, but his hands remained visible and away from it. "My name is Pierce Barrett," he said, stopping his horse about 20 feet away. "I have been tracking that wagon train for 2 days. I am a scout, hired by a family to find their daughter who ran off with them. But I can see you are in some trouble here." "They left me," Lena said, and hearing the words aloud made them more real. "My father died and the wheel broke, and they would not wait." Pierce's jaw tightened, and something like anger flashed in his eyes. That is the way of some wagon masters. They fear any delay will cost them the season. He looked at the wagon, at the fresh grave nearby, at her standing alone with her rifle. "You cannot stay here. Do you have people in California?" "I have no one," Lena admitted. The truth of it settled over her like a weight. "My father and I, we were all that was left of our family." Pierce was quiet for a moment, and she watched him think, watched the way he looked at the mountains and then back at her. "The nearest town is Pinos Altos, about 15 miles southwest. I have a small ranch outside of town." "I am going to tell you something straight, Miss Lawrence. Lena Lawrence. Miss Lawrence. You have 3 choices. You can stay here and likely die of thirst or worse. You can try to walk to Pinos Altos and likely die on the way. Or you can come with me, and I give you my word as a man who was raised by a decent mother that I will see you safely to town or to my ranch, whichever you prefer." Lena studied him. She had learned to read people in her 22 years, had learned that some men lied with honey in their voices and others told hard truths. Pierce Barrett looked like the latter. His face was honest, weathered by sun and work, and his eyes met hers directly. "Why would you help me?" she asked. Because leaving a woman to die in the desert sits poorly with me, he said simply. And because I know what it is like to lose family and feel alone in the world. The sun beat down, and Lena knew she was out of options. She could not fix the wheel alone, could not catch up to the wagon train on foot, could not survive out here with her limited supplies. Sometimes survival meant trusting a stranger. "All right," she said, "but I am keeping my rifle." "I would expect nothing less," Pierce said, and she saw the corner of his mouth lift slightly. "Gather what you can carry. The wagon will have to stay." Lena moved quickly, grabbing her father's saddlebag and filling it with what mattered. Her mother's Bible, a few changes of clothes, a tin with her mother's wedding ring, the little money they had left, ammunition for the rifle, and a canteen. She took one last look at her father's grave, marked with a simple wooden cross Pierce helped her secure in the ground. "I am sorry I cannot give you more time," Pierce said quietly, standing beside her. "But we need to reach water before nightfall." "He would understand," Lena said, though her throat felt tight. He was a practical man. Pierce had brought a second horse, a gentle mare he said had belonged to his mother. Lena was grateful she knew how to ride, though it had been years. Her father had taught her as a girl, back when they still had their farm in Missouri. They rode southwest, and Pierce set a steady pace that ate up the miles without exhausting the horses. He pointed out landmarks, showed her where water might be found, explained how to read the landscape. He was a good teacher, patient and clear, and Lena found herself relaxing slightly despite the strangeness of her situation. "You said you were tracking the wagon train for a family," she said after they had ridden for an hour. "Did you find their daughter?" "I did 3 days ago," Pierce said. "She was in love with a young man on the train and they had married in Santa Fe. I told her family and they were not pleased, but there was nothing to be done. She made her choice." He glanced at Lena. "I was heading back to Pino's Altos when I saw your wagon." "Lucky for me," Lena said. "Or fate," Pierce replied. "I do not believe much happens by accident." They rode on, and Lena found herself watching him. He moved with the horse as if they were one creature, and he constantly scanned the horizon, alert for danger. There was something solid about him, something that made her feel, for the first time since her father had fallen ill, like she might actually survive this. As the sun began to sink lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Pierce led them to a small canyon where a spring bubbled up from the rocks. They watered the horses, refilled the canteens, and Pierce set about making camp with efficient movements that spoke of long practice. "You are safe with me now," he said as he built a small fire. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I want you to know that I mean what I say. You are under my protection, and I will not let any harm come to you." The words should have sounded presumptuous, but instead they settled over Lena like a warm blanket. She was so tired, tired from burying her father, tired from fear, tired from the weight of being completely alone in the world. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I do not know what I would have done if you had not come along." "You would have figured something out," Pierce said, looking at her across the fire. "You have steel in you, I can see it." They ate a simple meal of jerky and hardtack, and Pierce told her about Pino's Altos. It was a mining town, he explained, that had seen better days but still had a few hundred residents. He had a ranch about 5 miles outside of town, a small spread where he raised horses and did scout work when he needed extra money. "I inherited the ranch from my father," he said, staring into the fire. "He died 4 years ago. My mother passed when I was 15. I have been alone since, except for the horses." "That must be hard," Lena said. "It is what it is," Pierce replied. "You learn to live with it. You make your peace with solitude." "I do not think I know how to do that," Lena admitted. I have always had my parents even after my mother died. My father and I, we had each other. You will learn, Pierce said gently, or you will find new people to fill the emptiness. Life has a way of surprising us. They slept on opposite sides of the fire, and Lena kept her rifle close, though she found she was not afraid. Pierce had given her his bedroll and taken only a thin blanket for himself, and that small act of kindness meant more than she could say. She woke once in the night and saw him sitting up, keeping watch, silhouetted against the stars. She should have felt vulnerable, but instead she felt protected, and she drifted back to sleep with the sound of the horses breathing softly nearby. They reached Pino's Altos the next afternoon, riding into a town that sprawled along a single main street with buildings that looked worn but sturdy. There was a general store, a saloon, a church, a hotel, and various other establishments that spoke of a community that had survived boom and bust. People watched as they rode in, and Lena was aware of how she must look, dusty and disheveled after days on the trail. Pierce nodded to a few people who called out greetings, and he led them to the hotel first. "Mrs. Cartwright runs this place," he said as they dismounted. "She is a good woman, a widow who knows what it is like to make her own way. She will have a room for you." Inside, the hotel was clean and simple. Mrs. Cartwright was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and capable hands. Pierce explained the situation in brief terms, and the woman's expression softened as she looked at Lena. "You poor dear," she said. "Of course I have a room. You can stay as long as you need." "I can pay," Lena said quickly, thinking of the small amount of money in her father's saddlebag. "We will work that out later," Mrs. Cartwright said. "Right now you need a hot bath and a proper meal. Come with me." Pierce touched his hat. "I will be back tomorrow to check on you. If you need anything, send word to the Barrett Ranch. Anyone in town can tell you where it is." "Wait," Lena said, and he paused. "Thank you for everything. You saved my life." His blue eyes were warm. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Lena said, "they would not have. The wagon train proved that." Pierce looked like he wanted to say more, but he simply nodded and left. Lena watched him go, feeling an odd emptiness as the door closed behind him. Mrs. Cartwright showed her to a small room on the second floor, and true to her word, she had a bath brought up. Lena sank into the hot water and let herself cry for the first time since her father died. She cried for him, for her mother, for the life she had lost and the uncertain future that stretched before her. But she also felt, beneath the grief, a small flicker of something else. Hope, maybe, or possibility. Pierce Barrett had appeared like something out of a story, and he had shown her kindness when he had no reason to. The world was not entirely cruel. There were still good people in it. Over the next few days, Lena settled into a strange new routine. Mrs. Cartwright gave her a job helping around the hotel, cleaning rooms and assisting with meals, in exchange for her board. It was honest work, and Lena threw herself into it, grateful to be busy, grateful not to have too much time to think. Pierce came to town every few days, always stopping by to check on her. They would sit in the hotel's small dining room, drinking coffee and talking. Lena learned that he had grown up on the ranch, that his father had been a horse trader and his mother, a school teacher from Boston, who had followed her heart west. He told her about the work of raising and training horses, about the way the land changed with the seasons, about the hard winters and the brief, beautiful springs. In turn, Lena told him about Missouri, about her parents' farm and the way they had struggled after her mother died. She told him about her father's dream of California, about the long journey west that had ended so terribly. Pierce listened with an intensity that made her feel heard, truly heard, in a way she had not been in a long time. "You still want to go to California?" He asked one afternoon in late August. Lena considered the question. She had spent weeks thinking about it, lying awake at night in her small room. "I do not know," she admitted. "That was my father's dream, not necessarily mine. I do not know what my dream is." "Then maybe you stay here for a while," Pierce said. "Figure it out. Pinos Altos is not a bad place. The people are decent for the most part, and you have work and a roof over your head." "Is that what you want?" Lena asked, and then wondered why she had phrased it that way. Pierce met her eyes, and something passed between them, something that made her heart beat faster. "I would like it if you stayed," he said quietly. "I have enjoyed getting to know you, Lena. You are strong and smart, and you do not shy away from hard truths. Those are qualities I admire." "I have enjoyed getting to know you too," Lena said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "You are nothing like I expected a cowboy to be." "And what did you expect?" Pierce asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Someone rougher, I suppose," Lena said. "Less thoughtful, but you notice things. You listen. You care about doing what is right." "My mother raised me to believe that how we treat people matters," Pierce said. "Especially people who are vulnerable or in need. She used to say that we are judged not by our words but by our actions." "She sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was," Pierce said, and there was old grief in his voice. "I miss her still. I think I will miss her all my life." September arrived, bringing slightly cooler temperatures and the first hints that summer would not last forever. Lena found herself settling into life in Pinos Altos in ways she had not anticipated. She made friends with some of the other women in town, went to church on Sundays, helped Mrs. Cartwright with the hotel. It was a simple life, but it was hers, earned by her own work. And then there was Pierce. He came to town more often now, sometimes with a horse to sell or trade, sometimes with business at the general store, but always he made time to see her. They would walk together down the main street or sit on the hotel's porch in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. One evening in mid-September, Pierce invited her to visit the ranch. "I would like to show you the place," he said. "And I think you would enjoy meeting the horses. Some of them are quite friendly." Lena agreed, and the next day Pierce arrived with the gentle mare, already saddled. They rode out of town together, and Lena felt a thrill of freedom as the buildings fell away and the land opened up around them. The Barrett ranch sat in a valley between two low hills, with a creek running through it. The house was modest but well built, made of adobe and wood with a porch that faced the mountains. There was a barn, several corrals and fields where horses grazed. It was beautiful in a spare, honest way, and Lena felt something in her chest tighten at the sight of it. "This is wonderful," she said as they dismounted. "You have built something real here." "My father built most of it," Pierce said. "I have just maintained it and tried to make it better. Come, I will show you around." He introduced her to the horses, a dozen of them in various stages of training. Lena was enchanted by a young chestnut mare with a white blaze on her forehead. The horse nuzzled her hand, gentle and curious. "She likes you," Pierce said, smiling. "That is Juniper. I have been working with her for 6 months. She will make someone a fine horse." "She is beautiful," Lena said, stroking Juniper's neck. They walked through the ranch, and Pierce showed her the vegetable garden behind the house, the chicken coop, the workshop where he repaired tack and equipment. It was the life of a working ranch, modest but sufficient. "Do you do all this yourself?" Lena asked. "Mostly," Pierce said. "I hire help during branding season and when I have a lot of horses to train, but day to day it is just me." "That is a lot of work for one person." "It is," Pierce agreed, "but it is good work, honest work. And the land rewards effort." They sat on the porch as the sun began to set, and Pierce brought out coffee and some bread and cheese. The evening was cool and beautiful, the sky turning shades of gold and rose. "I need to tell you something," Pierce said after a long silence. "I have been thinking about this for weeks, and I cannot keep it to myself anymore." Lena's heart began to pound. She looked at him, at his serious expression, at the way his hands gripped his coffee cup. "I care for you, Lena," he said, his voice steady but intense. "More than I have cared for anyone in a very long time. You came into my life by chance, or by fate, and you have changed something in me. I find myself thinking about you all the time, wanting to see you, wanting to make sure you are all right. I know it has only been a few weeks, and I know you are still grieving your father, but I needed you to know how I feel." Lena felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "Pierce," she said softly, "I care for you too. You saved me, yes, but it is more than that. You have shown me kindness and respect. You have listened to me and treated me as an equal. I think about you constantly. I look forward to your visits more than anything else in my days." Pierce set down his coffee cup and moved closer to her on the bench. He reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and careful. "I know this is fast," he said. "I know we should probably take more time, but I have learned that life is uncertain and short, and we should not waste chances when they come to us." "What are you saying?" Lena asked, though her heart already knew. "I am saying that I would like to court you properly," Pierce said. "With the intention of marriage, if that is something you might consider. I can offer you a home, a partnership, a life here. It will not be easy, and it will not be fancy, but it will be honest, and I will spend every day trying to make you happy." Lena looked into his blue eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. She thought about her father's dream of California, about the wagon train that had left her behind, about the strange path that had led her to this porch, this man, this moment. "Yes," she said, "I would like that very much." Pierce's face broke into a smile, genuine and bright, and he lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "You have made me the happiest man in New Mexico," he said. They sat together as the stars came out, talking about the future, about what their life might look like. Pierce told her he would build an addition to the house, give them more space. He talked about teaching her to train horses, about working the ranch together. He painted a picture of a partnership, a real partnership, and Lena found herself wanting it with a fierce intensity. "We will take it slow," Pierce said as he prepared to ride her back to town. "I want to do this right. I want the town to know you are being courted with honor and respect." "I appreciate that," Lena said, "though I think Mrs. Cartwright already suspects." Pierce laughed. "Mrs. Cartwright suspects everything. She has been trying to marry me off for years." Over the next 2 months, Pierce courted Lena with a steadiness that made her trust deepen into something richer and more complex. He came to town 3 or 4 times a week, always bringing small gifts: wildflowers, a book he thought she might enjoy, a beautiful leather journal for her to write in. They took long walks, went on rides into the countryside, attended church socials together. The town watched and approved. Pierce Barrett was well liked, known as a fair dealer and a man of his word. Lena was seen as a respectable young woman who had been dealt a hard hand by fate. People nodded when they saw them together, and said it was right that they had found each other. In early November, Pierce asked her to marry him officially. He did it simply, on the porch of the hotel with Mrs. Cartwright as a witness. He gave Lena a ring that had belonged to his mother, a simple gold band with a small garnet. "It would mean the world to me if you would wear this," he said, kneeling before her. "Will you marry me, Lena Lawrence? Will you be my wife and my partner and share this life with me?" "Yes," Lena said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married 3 weeks later, in the small church in Pinos Altos. Mrs. Cartwright helped Lena sew a simple but beautiful dress of pale blue. The whole town turned out for the wedding, and the minister spoke about the mysterious ways that God brought people together. Pierce stood at the altar looking handsome and nervous in his best clothes, and when Lena walked down the aisle, his face transformed with love. They spoke their vows clearly and firmly, promising to love and honor each other all the days of their lives. The reception was held in the hotel dining room with food provided by half the women in town. There was music and dancing, and Lena found herself laughing more than she had in years. Pierce held her close as they danced, and he whispered in her ear, "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for finding me," Lena whispered back. "Thank you for seeing me when I was lost." They rode out to the ranch that evening, husband and wife, and Pierce carried her over the threshold of the house that was now hers too. He had been true to his word, building a new room and filling the house with small touches for her comfort. Curtains for the windows, a rocking chair by the fireplace, shelves for books. Their wedding night was tender and sweet. Pierce was patient and gentle, and Lena felt cherished in a way she had never experienced. This was love, she realized. This was what it meant to be truly seen and valued by another person. Life at the ranch settled into a rhythm that Lena found deeply satisfying. She woke early with Pierce, helped with the horses, tended the garden and the chickens, cooked their meals. It was hard work, but it was work that mattered, work that built something real. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch together, watching the sun set over the mountains, talking about their day. Pierce taught her to train horses, showing her how to be firm but kind, how to read an animal's behavior, how to build trust. Lena discovered she had a talent for it. The horses responded to her calm presence and patient approach. Pierce was proud of her, and his pride made her glow. Winter came to New Mexico, cold and sometimes harsh. Snow fell in the mountains and the creek froze over at night, but the house was warm, and Lena had never felt more content. She wrote letters to a distant cousin back in Missouri, the only relative she had left, telling her about her new life. She described Pierce, the ranch, the satisfaction of building a life with her own hands. In late February, Lena realized she was pregnant. She told Pierce one evening after dinner, watching his face carefully. He was silent for a long moment, and then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Lena asked, though she could feel his joy in the way he held her. "Happy does not begin to describe it," Pierce said. "You have given me everything, Lena. A home that feels complete, a partner who makes every day better, and now a child. I do not know what I did to deserve this, but I thank God for it every single day." Lena's pregnancy progressed smoothly through the spring. Pierce was attentive to the point of being overprotective, trying to stop her from doing heavy work. Lena tolerated it with good humor, though she continued to do what she could. She was strong and healthy, and she refused to be an invalid. The women in town rallied around her, offering advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Mrs. Cartwright was particularly helpful, having raised 3 children of her own. She taught Lena to knit, and together they made blankets and tiny sweaters. In late October of 1869, Lena went into labor. Pierce rode for the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Torres, and then paced the house like a caged animal while Lena labored. It was long and hard, and there were moments when Pierce feared he would lose her. But finally, in the early hours of the morning, a baby's cry pierced the air. Mrs. Torres emerged from the bedroom, smiling. "You have a son," she said. "A healthy boy with a strong set of lungs." Pierce rushed into the room to find Lena exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in one of the blankets she had knitted. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was already waving his fists indignantly at the world. "Meet your son," Lena said softly. Pierce knelt beside the bed, looking at the small face with wonder. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you, Lena. Thank you for this gift." They named him Thomas after Pierce's father and called him Tommy. He was a good baby, alert and curious about the world. Pierce was a devoted father, changing diapers and walking the floor at night when Tommy was fussy. Lena watched him with their son and fell even more deeply in love with her husband. The years passed with the steady rhythm of ranch life. Tommy grew into a sturdy, laughing child who loved the horses and followed his father everywhere. When he was 3, Lena became pregnant again, and in the spring of 1873 they welcomed a daughter they named Sarah, after Pierce's mother. Sarah was different from Tommy, quieter and more thoughtful, with Pierce's blue eyes. She was content to sit in Lena's lap for hours, watching the world with serious attention. Tommy adored his baby sister and appointed himself her protector. The ranch prospered. Pierce's reputation as a horse trainer grew, and people came from miles around to buy his animals. Lena managed the household and the books, proving to have a head for figures. Together, they saved money, added more land, built a larger barn. In the evenings when the children were asleep, Pierce and Lena would sit on the porch as they had from the beginning. Sometimes they talked, and sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, hands linked. Their love had deepened over the years, weathering the challenges that all marriages face. Arguments over money, sleepless nights with sick children, the hard work of maintaining a ranch. But through it all, they remained partners in the truest sense. They made decisions together, supported each other's dreams, and never took for granted the strange fortune that had brought them together. When Tommy was 7 and Sarah was 4, Lena discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was harder. She was older now, nearly 30, and she tired more easily. Pierce worried constantly, but Lena reassured him. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time," she would say. "I am strong, Pierce. I will be fine." In December of 1876, she gave birth to twin boys, a surprise that left both of them reeling with joy and exhaustion. They named them Daniel and David, and suddenly the house was full of noise and chaos and love. Pierce hired a young woman from town to help Lena with the children and the house. Maria was 17 and the oldest of 6 children, capable and cheerful. She became part of their family, and Lena was grateful for her presence. The children grew. Tommy showed a talent for working with horses that matched his father's. Sarah loved books and learning, and Lena taught her to read at a young age, using the Bible and the few books they owned. The twins were wild and adventurous, constantly getting into mischief, but they were also loving and loyal to each other and their family. In 1880, when Tommy was 11, a man arrived at the ranch looking for Pierce. He was weather-beaten and lean, and he introduced himself as Jack Morrison, an old friend of Pierce's father. "I knew your pa back in the gold rush days," he told Pierce. "We prospected together before he settled down. I heard he passed, and I am sorry for that. He was a good man." Pierce invited Jack to stay for dinner, and over the meal, Jack told stories about Pierce's father that Pierce had never heard. It was a gift, these glimpses into his father's younger days, and Pierce was grateful. After dinner, Jack pulled Pierce aside. "I have a claim up in the mountains," he said. "Silver. I have been working it alone, but I am getting too old. I wondered if you might be interested in a partnership. Your pa always said you were smart and honest, and I could use a partner like that." Pierce considered it. The ranch was doing well, but extra income would not hurt, especially with 4 children to raise. He talked it over with Lena that night, laying out the pros and cons. "It would mean being gone some of the time," he said. maybe a week or two each month working the claim. But Jack seems honest, and if there is silver there, it could mean real money. Money for the children's futures. I trust your judgment, Lena said. And Maria and I can manage the ranch while you are gone. Tommy is old enough to help too. So Pierce entered into partnership with Jack Morrison. He spent 1 or 2 weeks each month up at the silver claim, while Lena managed things at home. It was an adjustment, and Lena missed him terribly when he was gone, but the arrangement worked. The claim produced steadily, not a fortune but a reliable income. Pierce put the money aside, planning for the future. He wanted Tommy to have land of his own when he was old enough. He wanted Sarah to have the education his mother had valued. He wanted the twins to have choices in their lives. In the summer of 1883, when Lena was 37 and Pierce was 41, they took stock of their lives. The children were healthy and happy. Tommy was 15, already taller than Pierce, and talking about getting his own place someday. Sarah was 10, reading everything she could get her hands on and dreaming of becoming a teacher. The twins were 7, still mischievous but showing signs of the men they would become. The ranch had grown to nearly 500 acres. The house had been expanded twice and was comfortable and welcoming. They had money in the bank, good horses in the corrals, and friends in town. One evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set, Pierce turned to Lena. "Do you ever think about that day I found you?" he asked. "All the time," Lena admitted. "I think about how lost I felt, how certain I was that I would die out there. I think about how close I came to riding a different direction," Pierce said. "If I had gone east instead of west, if I had been a day earlier or a day later, we would never have met." "Do you believe in fate?" Lena asked. Pierce was quiet for a moment. "I believe in grace," he said finally. "I believe that sometimes when we need it most, we are given exactly what we need. I needed you, Lena. I did not know it then, but I was lonely. This ranch, this life, it was all work and no joy. You brought joy back. You and the children, you gave me a reason beyond just surviving." Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. "You gave me a home when I had none," she said. "You gave me a reason to live when I thought everything had ended. You showed me that love is possible, even after loss." "We have built something good here," Pierce said. "We have," Lena agreed. "Something real and lasting." The years continued to pass, marked by the seasons and the milestones of their children's lives. Tommy met a girl at a dance in town, a rancher's daughter named Elizabeth, and at 18 he married her. Pierce deeded him 100 acres of the ranch, and Tommy built a house there. Within a year, Lena and Pierce became grandparents to a baby girl named Grace. Sarah did become a teacher, studying with the minister's wife, and then taking a position at the school in Pinos Altos. She boarded in town during the week and came home on weekends, full of stories about her students. The twins grew into strong, capable young men. Daniel followed his father into horse training, while David discovered a talent for carpentry and began taking jobs building houses and barns around the county. In 1892, Pierce and Lena celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. Their children threw them a party, inviting everyone from town. There was food and music and dancing, and at one point, Pierce and Lena found themselves alone for a moment in the midst of the celebration. 20 years, Pierce said, shaking his head. "It has gone so fast." "The best years of my life," Lena said. She was 52 now, with silver threads in her dark hair and lines around her eyes, but Pierce still looked at her with the same intensity he had shown that first day. "Mine too," Pierce said. He pulled her close and kissed her, not caring who might see. "I love you, Lena Barrett. I have loved you from almost the first moment I saw you standing by that broken wagon, brave and determined not to give up." "I love you too," Lena said. "You kept your promise, Pierce. You told me I was safe with you, and I have been. Every single day I have been safe and loved and cherished." As they grew older, Pierce and Lena gradually handed over more of the ranch work to their sons and Tommy. They remained active, still helping where they could, but they also allowed themselves to slow down, to enjoy their grandchildren, to take pleasure in the life they had built. In the winter of 1898, Pierce fell ill with pneumonia. Lena nursed him through the worst of it, sitting by his bedside for days, forcing him to drink broth and tea, praying harder than she had since her father died. For a week, she thought she might lose him, and the terror of it nearly broke her. But Pierce was strong, and he fought his way back. By spring, he was on his feet again, though he moved more slowly than before. The illness had aged him, and both of them knew they were entering the final season of their lives. They did not waste it. They made a point of gathering the family for Sunday dinners. They took rides together, visiting the places that held meaning for them. They sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains, grateful for every moment. Sarah married a merchant from Silver City, a kind man named Robert Chen, whose parents had come from China to work on the railroad. There were people in town who disapproved, but Pierce and Lena welcomed Robert into the family with open arms. Love was love, they believed, and Sarah was happy. Daniel married a widow with 2 children, becoming a father overnight. David remained single, content with his work and his solitude, though he was devoted to his nephews and nieces. In 1905, Pierce turned 63, and Lena was 60. They had been married for 33 years, and they had 7 grandchildren with another on the way. The ranch was thriving, their children were settled and happy, and they had lived to see the new century dawn. One evening in late summer, they sat on the porch as they had thousands of times before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Pierce held Lena's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I have been thinking," he said quietly, "about that day I found you. About all the years since. And I realized that saving you that day was not just about you surviving. It was about me surviving too. I was just existing before you came into my life, Lena. You taught me how to truly live." Lena felt tears prick her eyes. After all these years, he could still move her with his words. "We saved each other," she said. "That is what love does. It saves us from loneliness, from despair, from the darkness. You were my light in the darkness, Pierce. You still are." "And you are mine," Pierce said. He stood, pulling her to her feet. "Dance with me." There was no music, but they swayed together on the porch, holding each other close. The sun sank below the mountains, and the stars began to appear, and they danced in the twilight. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a life of love and meaning. In the autumn of 1908, Pierce passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 66 years old. Lena woke that morning to find him beside her, his face peaceful, his hand still resting on hers. She sat with him for a long time, memorizing his face, saying goodbye. The funeral was attended by everyone in Pinos Altos and many people from the surrounding area. Pierce had been respected and loved, and person after person told stories about his honesty, his kindness, his fair dealing. Lena listened to them all. Her children and grandchildren gathered around her, and she felt a bittersweet mixture of grief and gratitude. She lived on at the ranch for another 9 years, supported by her children and grandchildren. She still tended her garden, still fed the chickens, still sat on the porch in the evenings. But now she sat alone, talking to Pierce in her mind, feeling his presence in the house they had shared. She told her grandchildren stories about their grandfather, about the day he had found her beside a broken wagon, about how he had promised she would be safe, and had kept that promise every day of their life together. She wanted them to know what real love looked like, what commitment and partnership meant. In the spring of 1917, Lena fell ill. She was 72 years old, and she had lived a full, rich life. She knew her time was coming, and she was not afraid. Her children gathered around her bedside, and she held their hands, telling them how proud she was, how much she loved them. "Take care of each other," she whispered. "That is what matters most. Family, love, loyalty, those are the things that last." Sarah was holding her hand when she passed, her daughter's tears falling on her still warm skin. They buried her beside Pierce on a hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a sky so blue it hurt to look at it. The gravestone was simple. Lena Lawrence Barrett, 1846–1917. Beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, she was lost and was found. And beneath it, Pierce's stone. Pierce Thomas Barrett, 1842–1908. Beloved husband, father, and grandfather, he kept his promise. The ranch continued, passing down through the generations. Tommy's children and grandchildren worked the land, trained the horses, built on the foundation that Pierce and Lena had created. The house stood strong, and on summer evenings, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the echoes of laughter, of children playing, of two people who had loved each other deeply sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains of New Mexico. Their story became legend in Pino's altos, told and retold until it took on the quality of myth. The cowboy who saved the woman left behind by the wagon train, the love that grew from chance encounter into something lasting and true, the life built together through hard work and devotion. But it was not a myth, it was real. Every moment of joy and sorrow, every challenge overcome, every child raised, every horse trained, every sunrise watched together. It was real, and it mattered, and it echoed down through the years, a testament to the power of love to transform and redeem. Years later, when Tommy was an old man himself, he would take his great-grandchildren to the graves on the hill. He would tell them the story, starting with that fateful day in August 1868, when his father had ridden out to find a wagon train and had instead found a destiny. "Your great-grandmother was standing by a broken wagon, all alone in the world," he would say. "And your great-grandfather told her, 'You are safe with me now,' and she was. For the rest of their lives they kept each other safe. They built this ranch together. They raised us together. They loved each other every single day." The children would listen, wide-eyed, and Tommy would smile. "That is what love is," he would say. "Not just the romance, though there was plenty of that, but the everyday choosing of each other, the work and the struggle and the joy. That is what lasts." And the children would nod, not quite understanding yet, but carrying the story in their hearts. The story of Pierce and Lena, the cowboy and the woman he saved, who had taken the worst day of her life and transformed it into the beginning of something beautiful. The ranch continued to thrive into the 20th century, through wars and depressions, through droughts and floods. The Barrett family remained there, generation after generation, stewards of the land that Pierce and Lena had built together. The house was expanded and modernized, but the porch remained, and family members still sat there in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains. In the 1950s, one of Lena's great-great-granddaughters found a trunk in the attic of the old house. Inside were letters, journals, and photographs. There was Lena's journal, started in that leather-bound book Pierce had given her during their courtship. In fading ink, she had recorded the story of their meeting, their marriage, their life together. The family read the journals with tears and laughter, discovering the real people behind the legend. They read about Lena's fear that first day, her gratitude at being saved, her growing affection for the quiet cowboy who had shown her such kindness. They read about Pierce's wonder at finding someone who understood him, who shared his values, who made the lonely ranch feel like home. They read about the challenges. Years when the horses did not sell, when money was tight, when they had to make hard decisions. About the joys. Children's first steps and first words, successful harvests, neighbors helping neighbors, love deepening with each passing year. The journals were donated to the local historical society, along with photographs of Pierce and Lena at various ages. The images showed a handsome couple, their faces weathered by sun and work but their eyes bright with love and life. In one photograph, taken on their 20th anniversary, they stood on the porch of the ranch house, Pierce's arm around Lena's waist, both of them smiling at something outside the frame. The story of Pierce and Lena Barrett became part of the official history of Pinos Altos, taught in schools, written about in local histories. But for the family, it remained personal and immediate. They had inherited not just land and houses, but a legacy of love and partnership. When the ranch celebrated its 150th anniversary in 2018, over 200 descendants of Pierce and Lena gathered there. They came from all over the country, doctors and teachers, ranchers and artists, soldiers and scientists. They were diverse in occupation and appearance, but they all carried the same story in their hearts. At the celebration, Tommy's granddaughter, now 80 years old herself, stood on the porch where Pierce and Lena had sat so many evenings. She told the story one more time, her voice strong and clear. In August of 1868, a woman named Lena Lawrence was left behind by a wagon train. Her father had just died, her wagon was broken, and she was alone in the wilderness. A cowboy named Pierce Barrett found her. He could have ridden past. He could have left her to her fate, but he stopped, he helped, and he said words that would change both their lives. "You are safe with me now." The gathered descendants listened, many hearing the story for the 100th time, but it never got old. It was their origin story, the root from which they had all sprung. They built this ranch together, the old woman continued. They raised 4 children who became wonderful adults. They weathered hardship and celebrated joy. They loved each other for 33 years until death parted them. And even then, the love did not end. It echoes down through all of us. Every time we choose kindness over cruelty, partnership over selfishness, love over fear, we honor their memory. She paused, looking out over the crowd. We are here because Pierce stopped that day. We are here because Lena had the courage to trust a stranger. We are here because they chose love. Let us never forget that. Let us carry their story forward and let us live lives that would make them proud. The crowd burst into applause and someone started singing an old hymn that Lena had loved. The voices rose together, carrying across the valley over the creek, up to the graves on the hill where 2 people rested side by side, their work complete, their legacy secure. The sun set over the mountains of New Mexico, just as it had thousands of times before, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The Barrett Ranch stood solid and strong, a testament to what 2 people could build when they committed to each other and to the work. And in that moment, if you had stood very still and listened very carefully, you might have heard the echo of an old promise made by a cowboy to a frightened woman on a desperate day. You are safe with me now. It was a promise that had been kept for a lifetime and beyond. A promise that had created a family, a legacy, a love story that would be told for generations to come. The story of Pierce and Lena Barrett was not just history. It was alive, breathing through their descendants, embedded in the land they had worked, present in every choice their family made to love and support each other. It was proof that even in the hardest circumstances, hope could survive, that strangers could become soulmates. that a single act of kindness could ripple forward through time, creating waves of goodness that touched hundreds of lives. As the celebration continued into the evening, with music and food and laughter, the spirit of Pierce and Lena seemed to hover over it all, blessing the gathering, rejoicing in the family they had created, satisfied that their love had borne such abundant fruit. They had been ordinary people living in extraordinary times. They had not sought fame or fortune. They had simply done their best to build a good life together, to raise their children with love and values, to treat others with fairness and respect. But in doing so, they had created something that transcended the ordinary. They had proven that love was not just a feeling but a choice, made new each day. They had shown that partnership meant standing together through whatever life brought. They had demonstrated that family was the most important legacy anyone could leave. The story that had begun with a broken wagon and a dying father, with fear and loss and desperation, had transformed into something beautiful and enduring. A story of rescue that became a story of love. A story of two lonely people who found completeness in each other. A story that proved that sometimes, in our darkest moments, grace arrives in unexpected forms. Pierce Barrett had been right all those years ago. Life was uncertain, but when chances came, they should not be wasted. He had taken a chance on Lena and she on him, and from that single brave choice a whole world had grown. As night fell over the ranch and the party wound down, the last guests departed, promising to return next year. The family members who still lived on the ranch settled in for the night, children tucked into beds, adults relaxing on porches, everyone content and satisfied. The land was quiet under the stars, the same stars that had looked down on Pierce and Lena all those years ago. The house stood strong, filled with the echoes of laughter and love. The graves on the hill rested peacefully, two people reunited in death as they had been united in life. And if the story of Pierce and Lena Barrett proved anything, it was this: that love, true love, does not end. It transforms and continues, flowing forward through time, touching lives, creating beauty, giving hope. They had been safe with each other, and in that safety they had thrived. They had built not just a ranch but a legacy. They had lived not just a life but a love story for the ages. And so the story ends where it began, with a promise kept and a love that lasted beyond death, beyond time, beyond anything that the harsh world could throw at it. A love that saved two people and went on to bless hundreds more. Pierce and Lena Barrett, the cowboy and the woman he saved, the partners who built a life together in the wild beauty of New Mexico, had found their happily ever after. And their story, told and retold, would continue to inspire as long as there were people who believed in the power of love to transform and redeem.